handshakes or not handshakes?
No handshakes.
Were you knowing where you were going, like at least in the first move?
In total, I've been 19 years outside of my country. And, I was always, for the 3 countries, I was in malaria zone. So you're kind of starting to realize you unfortunately see or hear people dying.
How difficult was for you being a white woman in this kind of industry in an African country?
It was the best decision in my career, and it still is.
Welcome to Expat Experts. Today's guest is someone who navigated expat life in some of the most unexpected destinations, Wanda Serkowska. Wanda has built a career, made lifelong connections, and even started a family, all while living abroad and working in the male-dominated world of B2B telecommunications. She spent 5 years across Congo DRC, Benin, and Côte d'Ivoire, managing top-level clients as a sales leader. We will talk about her experiences and stories about life, business, and culture that shaped her life in West and Central Africa. So sit back, relax, and let's explore this expat experience together.
Wanda, welcome. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation and being here in the show with us. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Marco.
I would say, like, we start from the beginning of your experience. I know that you're originally from Poland, but you moved abroad for studies, and then you lived also working abroad. So what is the beginning of this whole story? Where are you from, and how you ended moving abroad?
So I was born in Warsaw, so I'm originally from Warsaw in Poland, and I lived here until I was 18. I kind of decided that there was nothing left for me. I didn't see my journey, I would say, through the university in Poland. And I left when I was 18. I first worked as a nanny in France, and then I started studying there. So I finished my studies in France, and I did as well in the UK. I wouldn't call that was what I call really expat life. It was kind of, as you can imagine, a student, living in a foreign country, but it was very formative. I think it formed me and opened a little bit, possibilities for me being in France at that time. When I then moved for 1 year to UK and stayed there, started my kind of professional journey, I would say. And I think I did 9 years in London, so it's quite a long time.
Not bad.
Yeah, I did, I think, 6 years in Paris. Great place to study, of course. And that was when I was living in the UK, working at Ericsson. I had an opportunity to kind of move into that expat world, so to speak, and I took the role within that company that took me to West Africa, to 3 West African countries. So as I was sharing, in total, I've been 19 years outside of my country, which is a long time.
Okay.
And I'm now in Poland back 5 years. So I've had quite a long time outside of my home country, for sure.
Not bad. I'm actually in the middle of that. So I'm in 8 years abroad.
Wow. Yeah.
And it feels already long. So 19 is a lot of time. Like, you were more years in London than I was already in 3 other countries, to be honest. But I share the same story a little bit. On the professional part, I was working and I got the option of going abroad due to work. So I get that point. In your case, you were already outside, and then it allowed you to move even further away. How did you take that as an opportunity? I assume it was your decision to move there, but how does it come to you to end being in West Africa? It's not one of the common destinations, let's say like this.
Yeah, so funnily enough, when I was in London, I was trying, I would say, for 2 or 3 years to move to Nigeria. So I always had the West Africa as a business target. Like, somehow I was feeling that I would be doing a great job there. And to be frank, I didn't have any facts. Like there was no, I was just feeling that this is where the money is. Well, kind of really from professional point of view. I'm very, focused on the money. So I wasn't able to land a job in Nigeria because you don't hire someone from London that looks like me. I mean, I had no experience and it wasn't so easy. So I was applying for jobs that were on the African continent. And then that opportunity actually came through French language. So I was in Ericsson talking to someone that was hiring. That person was sitting in South Africa. And I was telling him, I applied for the role in Lebanon. And I'm thinking what they will come up. Ericsson is a very global organization. So I was able to do that. And he was like, yeah, but Lebanon, you don't have to have French as a language? And I was like, yeah, but I'm French speaker. I studied in France. And then he the next day he called me and he said, okay, actually we have a role for 2 years in Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire that we're not able to fill in with your current role. So is this something you would like to take? So actually this came a bit like the side way, languages are always there. Like it comes back, it will come back and help you in a very, unexpected ways. And then I was like, okay, I haven't thought of it. I haven't thought of French countries there because I was focused on, thinking that somewhere else is interesting. And to be frank, that move, actually, in one day, I got that job. So the next day, the boss of that person that called me back, we had 30 minutes, and I got that role. And then next week, the big boss in Sweden, so he was already sitting in Kenya, Robert, was like, hold on, I have to speak to her because I'm not sure she knows what's happening. What will, I have to check if this person is ready. And I have to have 1 hour with her on video. And I was like, so actually this person wasn't really hiring me, but he was a big executive. And and he became my friend. He was asking me very kind of, surprising questions like, do you think, how will you make friends? How will you be on your own? How will you spend time on your own? And I was like, wow, this will be very different. So it was a kind of route, I would say, through that skill of French. Also, I was going to do exactly the same role as I was, which was kind of comfortable, I would say.
Makes a lot of sense. But I mean, languages open doors, that's for sure. I moved to two new countries in Europe that I didn't speak a single word of that language, and that was a big mistake, or at least, well, I ended speaking German and I ended speaking Greek, but which are not easy language also to learn in Europe, but bureaucratic wise, it's a nightmare. Like when you arrive, and absolutely when you arrive to a new country and you already speak the language, it makes life so easy. Here in Italy, I can communicate with people and I can talk with everyone, and that's so nice. I feel so much easy especially on this whole part of doing documentation and everything, with the government and tax wise, etc., etc. It's always another story. I wanted to ask you, because you already entered a little bit the whole idea of the difference, no? Or because I assume the first country was Côte d'Ivoire, as far as I understand.
Yes, Côte d'Ivoire, then Congo DRC, and then I was in Benin Republic. Yeah.
Were you knowing where you were going? At least in the first move, did you know the country at all before, or?
Look, I think I was a little bit. Now, when I think of it, I think I was a bit too confident. So I know because I know what happened afterwards. So basically, I've been to Ghana on holidays once before going to Abidjan, which is not the same country, still West Africa. I've been to South Africa on holidays, South Africa being very different. And I've been to Egypt and Morocco, and kind of was feeling like I was, that I'll get by. And I had always that feeling previously when I was abroad that, that I have this grit, that I can go to these difficult locations And I had that I still do feel that I'll be okay. But it's very different when and we know that it's very different to go somewhere for 1 week, you're visiting, you're moving around. It's very different to go somewhere and start working, doing exactly the same thing and having the same expectations, where you walk out of your office, and I had that for months. You walk up from your office and you're like, wow, I'm in this country, and I forgot because, I was typing my things, doing my presentations and talking to people, and so it was difficult. I think for 2 months, I was just shocked. And, I wasn't shocked with this being Africa. It was small things, like I was overwhelmed with the sun, like, small things that you can't. I was overwhelmed with, funny thing, I was overwhelmed and I couldn't get over that for 3 months, that every day when I'll be finished my work, the sun will be setting and that's it. And this will not change through the seasons. Because this is, you're near Ecuador. Yeah. This is the sunset. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. So basically I discovered that 1 hour after I finish work, any time of the year, that's it. It starts to be dark and it's complicated to go. There are lots of cars. It wasn't so easy to move around. So there were for 2 or 3 months, I was kind of under this weight of thinking, it's not really, was this a good decision? I was sure this was a great decision for my career. But I was thinking, is this sacrifice not too big for something that I think, will come down the line? That I had always this idea of feeling that this will be great for my career. So this was overwhelming. Honestly, I think 6 months.
Can imagine, and maybe that's a misconception also that we have as Europeans sometimes, and understanding parts of Africa as a block. And I think that's something that we do, and we do with other continents as an idea of India as a single thing, and when you go to South India or North India, it's a complete different thing. With countries in the north of Africa, it happens the same. With West Africa, it happens the same. Did you notice a big difference between the countries that you lived in?
Yeah, so I think this comes from experience. I think people that live in Asia, they have that. Nowadays, I hope I can say it on the video. Nowadays, when I'm talking to my daughter and we're looking at someone from Africa, I can tell, and this is 90% of my knowledge, where this person is from, just looking at how they dressed and how they looking. You get this also from the accents. There are big differences. Even countries that are really neighboring, because of their size and different, access to water, to the sea, there are massive differences. Even when you're taking Benin Republic, Togo, and Nigeria, which are really close to one another, they're just completely different. People are mixing a lot. You kind of, the way they were, drafted, the countries, unfortunately, due to the history, are kind of arbitrary. And I think a lot of, exactly. This is what you see
very
on the
straight
map
lines
of Africa. But there is a lot of people moving, and then you have people kind of from two countries, which is kind of the new understanding. Oh yeah, actually, this shouldn't be the border. But anyway, so I do feel big differences. There are differences in the people, how they are dressed, food. There are some similarities. So funnily enough, when you go into supermarkets in one French-speaking African country and another, there will be similarities. You will see a lot of things coming from Lebanon. There is a lot of things coming from different locations that you wouldn't expect in Europe that is importing, for example, foodstuffs and things like this. So you see the similarities. The businesses are similar. That might be also other reasons, but differences are big. I think from my experience, which is probably a good experience, the way we were working in that one organization that I was in 3 different countries was obviously, this was probably the design, it was the same. It was very similar. And that kind of, I think, grounded me through these first months when I was kind of almost kind of like my brain was exploding from the, from kind of everything around me. I think this was kind of difficult, but because I was working in the same organization that I knew that had this, matrix working. This is a big corporate organization. I think that was very helpful. So I felt kind of safe once, in front of my laptop and working. When I was finishing work, I was like, okay, so what do I do with myself now? It was completely different challenges, I would say.
Were your colleagues there from the country, or you had other expat colleagues in there? How was the environment?
Yeah, so that depends. For example, in Abidjan, it was a big office, and I would say 90% of people were local from Côte d'Ivoire. I started to understand, and this is something that you understand when you're working in West Africa or in Africa. There is also a part that was like, I would say 5% or maybe more of people that were local but from neighboring countries. It's quite common because these are engineers, people that are skilled, that would come from other African countries that are not far. And that would be in any office, I would see it. So then you're kind of understanding how the skills need to be pulled from other countries in order to fill in that specific, need. So there was always a lot of people from Nigeria and from Ghana. They were very skilled, a lot of engineers, a lot of people as well, I would say, from Senegal. So there will be some people. The first year I was working, I was sitting next to Manuel from Portugal. So I was next to his desk, and it was a big boss. So this was very useful for me in many ways. And there were also, so actually I would say from the non-African countries, one Portuguese person, there were two guys from Chile. And we were kind of the four white people, I guess. That's what we would say, non-Africans that were in that office. And we were doing, like, we would go out on Saturday, for example, to drive somewhere and stay and see something together. So I would not necessarily hang around because we weren't working together. But it was something that, like me and Manuel, we are so close because he also arrived the next day, I think, after me. And it was his first role in that role as well. We're good friends. So it's amazing how things that are different outside brings you closer.
It's interesting. Like it sounds very similar. When I was in Germany, I worked for Deutsche Bank, which is also like an enormous corporation at the end.
Yeah.
And most of our colleagues were expats. And when you think about it, we didn't have much in common, like with a lot of the people. But the fact that you were new to a country and you were an expat in there and you were feeling the same or living the same experience, struggling with the same bureaucratic problems, willing to see the same, I don't know, tourist spots maybe, or even like countryside or nature around where you were, unites us in a way that if we would have been going to school together, for example, we would not probably have been ending being friends or like being connected in a special way. That's the reality. But then suddenly, because you are in a country that you don't understand the language, you don't understand the culture, you are there lost, and you are getting together with the people who's passing through the same thing, no? Let's say like this. I wanted to ask you, because you said something about the contract itself. Like you said that you were sent there for a position of 2 years. Was that the case in all three countries, that that was for a limited amount of time?
Yeah, so I think I was sent there, I was given that role. I was told for 2 years, but in actual terms, I was given a non-determined contract, which was like a permanent contract. That was advantageous to me, but I think it was more related to what contracts the company wanted to use for many reasons, might be a lot of reasons. What did happen though, I did 1 year exactly in that role in Abidjan, and then as I was really, I wouldn't say hustling, but I was networking. I was trying to see where are the best places, like what is the most interesting in this company in that region. And I managed to, it's maybe easier actually than in Europe to meet a lot of people and get to know a lot of people from other countries that were working within the same organization. And I applied for the sales role. So I was in a proposal manager role. It was kind of more commercial, but behind the scenes, looking at the biggest deals and working together with the team. It wasn't me in front of the customer, and I wanted to be in front of the customer. As I was saying, I had this strong feeling, I was convinced that I will be so good in front of the customer. And Ericsson teams weren't so sure. They were like, she's not from here. They were it wasn't so easy. I had to really convince people and make proof of it and bring customers almost from the street so that they kind of want to give me a shot. And I applied at that time for the account manager role in DRC. And this was coincidental that they wanted to change an account manager. And actually, at the same week, I just randomly contacted this person. He had to find someone. So she was like, how does she know this? Let's see. And I had, internal interviews. There was another person applying for it. But I think part of it was I was already very close. I was already working in French. So there are those things as well that were playing. So I moved to a different role within a sales organization, really directly with the customer. And at that time, obviously, I moved to Kinshasa from Abidjan. So I moved to Democratic Republic of the Congo. Yeah. Very exciting times.
Interesting. I let you talk because I find it...
Yeah, it was very exciting. I remember I was landing. I was first time traveling to Kinshasa for the role. So I knew, it's kind of scary, but that happened every time with me. You're landing somewhere and you will be staying there, and you can't just test, see, do I like it? No, you're landing there, you have all of your luggage and you have to prove yourself, and you have certain targets and people to meet immediately and perform to the highest kind of standard of this organization. So I think it was tricky, but I think the fact that I had this role that I had to perform, I think for me, for my personality, it was helpful. I was focusing on that and those small things that I was like, how do I solve all these problems, people around me and noises, how to find a flat and, things that are becomes complicated when you're not from the location, especially I would say on the continent, on the African continent. I had some help. There was the help of the company. I had 3 months of the accommodation organized, and there were some other things. But then, there are things that they're not organize. They're not organizing, and your free time, your friends. You don't necessarily in Kinshasa. It's a great, very dynamic city, very big. However, you don't have the same level, obviously, like London or any bustling city with a lot of single people that want to, go out, they want to eat out, that don't want to see this thing. It's very different dynamics. So there is a small area normally that you would be able to go out. But then after a month, this area of the city, and this is the place you can go out. And, there are a few places, and then you start seeing the same people, which has its own, great sides, but it's very different. It shifts you so much. Your life become very different. Really.
I mean, that's now that we are talking already about challenges and surprising moments, I had a couple of questions about exactly that. Like, how did you make friends in there? How did you make personal connections with the locals? Even I don't know if you live really in a bubble. Other guests that I had, they describe it very much like you are in a protected place, and then you live in there. You move out only in district. What you were saying, no, like in designated areas. And how was it?
I think it was a little bit like this, and it wasn't with me. So there were a few things. So obviously there were my colleagues that I was working with, and they were in my office. And, through the years, I would get closer to some and not so close to others. And I think there is this thing again that, colleagues that were from another country, we kind of would be they would be all Africans, but we would get closer. And I'm still very close with a lot of people. Just because maybe they didn't have so many family members next to them. I think it's part of that. People that were really from the city, from that town or a village somewhere nearby, they would have so many, I think, personal time spent with different things, organizing things for the families. I think part of that was that they weren't as available. And, otherwise people that had their families a bit farther away, or they might have small family, but they weren't so busy. I think I was able to build with them great friendships. I think there was a challenge though. So, I would not have so many friends. So just to give you an example, in Abidjan, I had one friend, very good Senegalese from my office, very, very good friend of mine. We worked together and we did a lot of things together as well. But we were kind of similar. I was outside, she was also on her own, and we were kind of spending our time together. And other than that, I had another friend from Luxembourg, Marie-Laure, who was coming in exactly the same time as me. She was coming to EY, so also kind of like a expat totally. She was coming on her own from Europe, and then we became like, we were always together. We would meet every day, Marc. Every day. Like, this is not possible in London, right? You don't do that in Paris or in London. So it's a very different dynamic. And it's almost like we always had something to talk about. We always had somewhere to go and eat. And there were so many things that we were doing together that would never happen to us, like police chasing us, like people chasing us, some random guys chasing us, like everything was kind of funny, but on the spot, sometimes things were, very different. We had to we were working, I think, together. We were together because it was easier, like things were, when we were two, we were kind of not necessarily safer, but kind of stronger. So it was different. I didn't have number of people, friends, acquaintances. I would just have acquaintances, I would say, from the office, friends from the office and friends outside. I think what I did develop, and this was exceptional related to the role that I had, was that starting from the moment I moved to Kinshasa, I was account manager leading the account. So I was the representative of the company and also entertaining a customer or customers. So that meant that I was going out and inviting customers a lot. So both in Benin and in Kinshasa, which actually meant, I remember it was a moment when I had a driver so I was giving a driver in a car in Kinshasa, and my driver was finishing his job was finishing at 9 p.m. And I remember after 1 month, I had to go back to my boss and say that I have to have a driver 24/7 because I'm dropping off customers. So they are relying on me that I'll pick them up. That was I'll pick them up with the driver and I'll drop them off 11 o'clock or midnight or 11 o'clock, let's say. So they gave me, I had a special 24/7 actually chauffeur service. And that shows that my time was, and they became my friends. I would say, customer is always a different relationship, but to be frank, I was seeing some of my customers a lot, once a week outside of the office, So definitely, I think it's different than what I've seen in Europe. Yeah.
I have two questions more about the challenges, and you touched them briefly individually, let's say like this. The first one, it's clearly you are a single woman in a clearly male-dominated industry in a country that it's maybe have different cultural ways of doing business probably, and dealing a lot with clients. How you adapted to the cultural changes, and we will touch that a little bit more because I prepared a mini game about business relations. But how difficult was for you being a white woman in this kind of industry in an African country?
Specifically that, in telecommunications area where I work, I think even in Ericsson, that is a Swedish company, women are 20% or 30% max. So any even customer, it was rare. I would say when I was working, my customer was MTN Benin. There were quite a lot of women on the higher level. So I was talking to women, as MTN is that kind of company. I would say rather that this would be men. A lot of engineers, obviously, I was dealing with the network planners, CTO, CIO would be most of the time over there a man. I think I had this benefit of them knowing immediately that I am from outside, like that I'm a white woman, that I'm foreign, that I'm not knowing, that there are certain things that I don't know. I think it's a little bit like it first gives you they give you that benefit of a doubt that she's coming from outside. And I think, as long as you earn trust and you earn your stripes, so to speak, you perform as this helper, as a salesperson, you're a helper, to fix things. Things are to go smooth. I think I would say they probably would give me 1 month in their mind. When they saw me, they were like, who is this girl? She's so pale. Like one of my friends, my customer, who then 1 year later told me, you were sitting there and I'm looking in your hands and I'm like, who did they send here? She's so pale. But basically he was thinking of me as how will I survive? Like, this is really tough, coming to DRC. And I wasn't looking tough, I guess, as I was just looking normal. Like I look normal. So I wasn't looking tough. I think also they were used to having men in these roles. I think there were differences, but I was giving a little bit of room, knowing that I'm from outside and I will be different. So I was not trying to do business and discussions, conversations, entertainment as if I was from the country, because that wouldn't work. And also I don't know. So no one was telling me. I was behaving almost the same way I would in Europe. And I think people that were working with me, when they already were trusting me and seeing that I want their good, that I don't want to sell them some crap, like that I am on their side. I think they were giving me that room that sometimes it will be a bit different, maybe, I don't know, even maybe I laugh more, or there are certain things that I wouldn't know. I do think that I noticed that was maybe after a year, certain things that are, you as someone from outside, you don't realize certain things. You only afterwards realize it. And actually after a year, after a conversation with a customer that made me a little bit more aware of that, I only then realized, and I started to be quite careful, that me being an account manager, the salesperson, talking constantly to the same people, because, I would have like 5 major contacts, and there will be other people, but, those were, CFO, CTO, big guys, and also engineers, that from outside, that could be that, for the wives of these guys, that could potentially be like not threatening, but I was completely oblivious. And then I had this realization. Someone was asking me what I think about that maybe someone thinks there is something else. And then I was like, I don't care. I can't care. And I was continuing the same way. And then, it's kind of like I can't change what someone else thinks. Ultimately, I'm me, and I represent the best way I can the company, and I'm trying to do my job the best way. But, doing my job would be going every day to the 5th floor to see the CFO in the office to make sure that, our collection is paid or certain things. So basically, I kind of couldn't, it's almost like everything could be lose-lose. Like you can't win everything. And I think because I was like not, I was careful, but I couldn't really afterwards second guess myself because, you're not in someone else. So someone did tell me that, what I think about that. And, maybe there are some gossips. And I was just laughing and thinking like, well, that's a joke because, but indeed I think because there is a big proximity in the way that, if I was an account manager, and I'm actually working now as an account manager in Equinix in Warsaw, I don't go to see my customers so often at all. Like we meet once, even if a quarter, there is a lot of people in the room. It's a very different way of doing business, but I also think because it was a different business, I had one customer or two. So basically means I know everyone in that company, and my job is to know everyone in that company. And today I have 40 customers, maybe 50, and they come to me when they need something. And over there, it was kind of making sure that things don't go badly because the business was so big. Even going further, when I was in Cotonou in Benin Republic, the CTO requirement, or kind of like a jokey requirement, but that was actually a requirement, was that I sit in the customer office across his glass door so that he sees me, that I am in his office, that I'm here. If he needs me, I will be there. So while I was working for someone else, I was sitting in the customer offices, and that proximity was requirement. Even that proximity that kind of you see, and kind of obviously it's easy as well. This person is here to help me. I need something, I'll ask her. That's probably ideal, right? When you think from the customer point of view.
Yeah. It's more like a personal relation at the same time. Not personal. It's still professional, but it's more close in that sense. No, and it's interesting that you say that you needed to adapt a little bit, but a lot of clients also needed to adapt to your way, the other way around, and then that's
I think they
also
did.
Well, that's good. It shows character, at least. That's for sure.
Well, it also shows their flexibility. Customers are very flexible, I think, in on the continent, on the African continent, I would say.
Nice. Before we jump to the cultural deep dive and taking a little bit, I prepared a couple of expat mini games, as I like to call them. Yeah. But I would like you to explain to our listeners if who are considering working or moving to a not so obvious expat destination, especially in West Africa, what would be the biggest tip that you will give, the number one survival tip that you would give to them?
I think something that is easy, makes things easier when you're actually deciding and already moving, is to keep something in your rituals or something that you like doing, whether this is activity or something that you can replicate there. Because there are so many variables, there are so many things that are changing and will be changing. And, just as I was saying about the sun setting, just the weather, the feel that you have on the street. There are certain locations, me coming from rainy London, it's impacted me quite. So I think when you can keep something or recreate it, that gives you this peace and kind of, if you can do it every day, your kind of routine. So I started to run. I was a runner before. I stopped running, obviously, I didn't know where to run when I arrived at Abidjan. This is really busy. There's a lot of cars, and there is no pavement. I was in the area that was kind of a busy district with a lot of restaurants, and there was just no space to run. So I was suddenly not very happy and thinking, okay, I'll have to run in this gym, and I don't like running on the treadmill. And I was feeling already, my mood was another thing that was a little bit pulling me down. And then I saw one person from my office that was in my apartment block, a Nigerian project manager that had this small light behind his back, and he was running between the cars at night. And I was I spoke to him, and he's like, yeah, I have a great route. I have a light for you. Come and join me tomorrow. And I was like, wait. And I was like, it's really, you have cars in a traffic jam and you have to run there, and it's dark and there is no big lights. At least at that time, there wasn't big lights, on the street. So this was how he found his way. And he was probably coming from Lagos. So Abidjan, no big deal for him. It's a bigger city than Abidjan. And I started run with him, and we were running every day together. And it just changed my mood. It kind of gave me this power, I'm able to do something I loved, and I thought I have to give up. And actually, no, there is always a way, and I was continuing that. When he left, I continued. I had my own lights. I was running on my own, and I was doing always his route. It was super safe. It kind of was helping me to clear my mind. But this whole feeling that you can, overcome your fear and do something for yourself for this 40 minutes. So I think in line with that, it's great if you can to try to keep something from your routine. If it's an activity that makes you happy, that's ideal. I don't know if it's always possible, but definitely, because it will be tough, like at some point.
Yeah, a lot of changes. So at least one thing, it keeps you connected to your real self, no, let's say like this. Nice. Thank you so much. So I would say that we jump directly into the first challenge.
Hey there, everyone. I hope you're enjoying this episode so far. Remember that the best way to stay tuned with the latest episodes of the podcast is by clicking on subscribe in YouTube and in your favorite audio platform. For extra content and information, follow, like, and comment on our social media and visit our website, expatexpertspodcast.com. Thank you for supporting our podcast, and let's continue with the episode.
Mini game that I prepared, which I called Which Country Wins, and I will name you a category of a thing, and then you would, if you can explain me from the countries you lived on, what is the one that you decide that, or that you think that has the best of that category. And the first one would be the best street food.
The best street food, maybe Kinshasa, beignet. So this is like very nice beignet that they're making on the street. I was eating them in the morning for a number of weeks before working. So yeah, definitely Côte DRC.
Nice. What about fun work culture that it's funny to work with?
Yeah. So I think I would say Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan. What I thought it was great was you would have on Friday, everyone will be coming in the traditional outfits every Friday, and you would see it everywhere. Everyone will be wearing their traditional outfits, whether this will be from the north, from the south. So you'll have different cuts and different, patterns. And everyone in the office will be, this was casual Friday. So I was like, I came on Friday and I was the only one dressed like me. So I started to catch up with that, and I was having my own local outfits made. I would say it's a very fun-loving nation, Ivoirians. Yeah.
Cool. Related with that, most welcoming locals.
I would say in every country, it's tricky. I have a big, I guess, deep love for Congolese people and Kinshasa itself, and overall Congolese culture. But I would say Ivoirians and people from Benin are also very welcoming. It's just that Congo is kind of, maybe because of a lot of problems, complicated country, touches me the most.
The best weekend getaway spot.
That is a lovely one. Grand Popo, outside of Cotonou in Benin. So this is going towards Togo border all the way. I do think in the taxi or in a car, it's 1 hour, 15 minutes. Has beautiful beaches, very nice 2 or 3 small but very nice hotels, great fish. Awesome. We did that weekend many times when I was there.
I need to note that one. Mark it in a map as a place to visit. What about best work-life balance?
I think in everyone. So in every country, I would say it's tricky to say. It was much better than what I had in Europe because that's a story. Because there is so much help. So I could already work. My driver will come and pick me up. I'm opening my laptop and I'm working in the car. And, there is so many things. There's so much help that you can get. I had a nanny. My daughter was born in South Africa, so she was small in Benin. I had an amazing nanny. She's an amazing person. You have so much help you can get that makes you optimize your time. You actually have more time. So I think in every country, this is, I think, the positive, and this is definitely something that expats love, that there is a lot of help that you can get. Yeah.
Absolutely. Related to getting help, and I suppose Ericsson also provided some support in there. What is the most efficient bureaucracy?
Very, it was very, very efficient.
What about bureaucracy of each country?
I think every country has its own flavor of it. It's the three countries are very bureaucratic. I would say Côte d'Ivoire and Benin very bureaucratic. Because somehow, I guess, from the history, they still think, or at that time when I was there, so more than 5 years ago, I think they were taking as a template French bureaucracy, which now France is kind of trying to get rid of, but I think they kind of building on that bureaucracy. I would say maybe Côte d'Ivoire, but to be frank, while extremely bureaucratic, long-term, and with a lot of effort, I still managed to get my retirement fund out of the country. So bureaucracy that actually leads to something, to result that is almost unbelievable, that you're paying in money that you'll never recover because it's a retirement that you'll not have in this country. And, Ericsson staff, I left 2 years afterwards, 3 years, they were still trying to recover that, but they persisted and we actually did it. So there is incredible bureaucracy, but it's all the dots are linked. So I'm still impressed with that result, to be honest.
Cool. Last one of this round, easiest place to make friends.
I think maybe DRC, Congo.
Nice.
Somehow the nightlife, the things that you can do. Maybe there is also many expats. Maybe there is a lot of things that you can do outside, and there is a lot of kind of closeness that we are all in this together, and we're trying to make the best out of our time here and work and have fun the best way. I think I would say this is DRC.
Nice. What about business etiquette? I will switch a little bit the dynamic of this one. So I wanted to ask you, because I'm also curious about it. So I would put you in two situations, so two business behaviors, and you tell me from the countries that you lived in West Africa if it's more common to do one thing or the other. And the first one that I have, it's if it's more common to have strict contracts or verbal agreements.
I would say verbal agreements, but the expectation is that this verbal agreement will be 100% the same when we sign it.
Okay. So you start with a verbal agreement, but that needs to be translated in paper as you said it in the verbal agreement. Cool. Emails or face-to-face meetings?
From customer point of view, face-to-face meetings. And it was funny because actually in MTN, when I was my customer was MTN, we were in Benin, French-speaking country, where everyone speaks French. Where you actually, if you speak English only, it's a challenge on a day-to-day kind of. It's very challenging because it's a small country. All the emails were in English, so it's incredible. Yeah, because of MTN is a South African company, and it also translates, anyone can review, your manager, your boss might be sitting somewhere else. So incredible flexibility of a company, basically working in two languages. So they had to be proficient in both. I would say 100% face-to-face. Basically, we wouldn't have certain discussions until we meet. And then email is just a formality, yeah.
Maybe the last one, checking the time. Handshakes or not handshakes?
No handshakes. So Actually, no, I would say it's very different. So it really it depends on the person. So when I knew someone, there will be even hugs. So someone, a customer or, a man, because they will give me a hug, or actually, this is what you do in France, although I think it's not in a work environment, but that would happen, that I would have a pick on a cheek. There will be certain people, certain executives that would welcome me that way, but I knew them already, and they also knew that I was okay with that. So very different. Now I had another situation. That's why I say no handshakes. That my own colleague, my engineer, was coming from Lebanon, and he comes, and I want to hug him, and he's keeping his hands behind, and he's like, I can't. And then I couldn't, I was just so surprised. And then, so kind of, it made me a bit more aware that there are different things and for different reasons. So I would say it's really dependent on the person. Yeah.
I wanted to, it came to my mind now, just when you said that. What about the titles and the way of talking to each other? Do you use the first names, or you use formal titles in business in these countries?
Yeah, so I would say when I was meeting a customer, in French, because we always speak French. I would hardly ever speak English unless there was someone that was a foreigner. So we would mostly use the second, so it kind of like a vous form, which is this you as a plural, as a starter. But that will be, informal very quickly. So they would always informally address me. And then I still try to address them more formally so that I create this distance. Many people were older than me. I actually thought myself that the distance is good for me. They would most of the time, use informal language to me. Yeah.
Interesting. I would say we jump to the next section. I ask the audience and the listeners for having some questions for you. And I received 2 of them that are very interesting. I received more, but we covered majority of them. Okay. So I was checking right now what could I ask from them. I have one from JT, which asks, how did your time in West Africa shape your career after coming back to Europe?
Yeah, it was the best decision in my career, and it still is. So it was what I was thinking that this will be great for my career. It was exponentially better. And this is something that I don't know why I felt that way, but it basically exploded my career, if I can say that. Because I had great results in sales. I started to know so many people within my organization and other organizations, and basically it kind of changed what I was interested in. So I'm still very interested in the region and these customers, and the telco customers. Even now that I'm more into data center business, the actual connectivity of the customers that I was serving at the time is so important. Fiber is so important in Africa. Satellites are so important, subsea. These are so important that it actually changed. When I was in Europe, I didn't have my own preference. I was like, okay, I can work here and work here, maybe tech. Okay, I was always in IT, but I didn't have preferences. Over there, it was mind-blowing. The other thing that had a very big impact is I suddenly realized that I had so many skills that were needed. Because we always were running out of hands. There was always, I think these organizations, they're kind of patchy. They're trying to post here, people there. But, our biggest teams were in South Africa. So, where I was in the countries, we often didn't have someone to do something. Or we were doing something here locally and someone was deciding something in Johannesburg. And actually, it allowed me to work so much outside of my remit that my job description was completely, you are so flexible, you can do what you want. And actually, this would never happen if I stayed in Europe. Because in Europe, you have this, and there are so many other experts that are better than you to do other things, and you're not allowed to do a lot of projects. You don't have that opportunity. So I think that was definitely still the best decision in my life. career-wise?
Nice. Very cool.
I like the question.
It's very nice. Actually, this is mine because now you said something that it triggered my curiosity. How did the decision to go back home came with?
Yeah, so I was there 4.5 years in West Africa, and there were a few factors. One of it was I started to be tired with this newness and these, you always have to be, it's a very different world, I think. And after a while, it tires you. It's kind of like a very everyday thing, that, I couldn't buy something on Amazon or something small, that I couldn't have this thing. And after a while, when you had to go without certain things, you're feeling like you're sacrificing. So I started to kind of feel that I wanted a change. The other thing that is serious and kind of was a important factor was health. So I was, I went there feeling like I'm invincible, like I will never be sick, and I was never sick, almost ever, like normal things, but I was never seriously ill. And being in these countries, well, I felt nothing will happen to me, and I was, immune to anything, made me realize that there are these advancements in medicine that we take for granted, that, there are still illnesses that are very serious. And, I was always, for the 3 countries, I was in malaria zone. So you're kind of starting to realize you unfortunately see or hear people dying from things that are not necessary, like unnecessary. And it kind of works on you. This worry started to start in me that, what if I have a malaria? What if what if my daughter has malaria? She was then 1 year old, and we were in Cotonou where there was no emergency services. You can't call an ambulance. There will be traffic jam or something. It's actually very complicated. So you're always on your own. And even, you have this great resource as an expat, obviously. Like I had, this is completely not comparable to someone that lives in there and has to work with their own resources. But I got tired of, I had to go, before going to the office, I had to stop by to test from finger to malaria so many times because I was feeling unwell. So, when you have like a nose kind of blocked or you slight fever, immediately you have to go and check yourself. And at first it's kind of like maybe thrilling, I'm a thrill seeker. So I was thinking this is experience and this is, but after many years and months, when you hear someone really getting ill or some complications, and these were things that I've seen, I started to be worried. This was kind of like heavy, and I was just like, I just want to leave and be somewhere where it's predictable. And I think that predictability and that kind of safety, and together with the time I spent and being, having a very exposed role as well, where I had to stay, there was some unrest, civil unrest, I had to stay. There were some other things, there were a lot of things happening in DRC at that time. And the decision also mine was that I will stay, there were like a lot of things. And I think after a while, it kind of stop, this bit by bit kind of comes to you, and you're like, if there is an opportunity, I will leave. And there was also a change of my boss. My boss has left, and I was like, it's a good opportunity. And I resigned from Ericsson. So I went back, and for the first time, I was thinking, actually, maybe it's a good idea to go back to Poland. And I never was considering previously going to my home country. I never worked in Poland. At that time, my Polish started to be so-so, like I wasn't using it at all. So, but, my family is very big in Warsaw. It's very easy to be in Warsaw. They said, there is a house waiting for you. We have a flat you can take. There were a lot of things that I wasn't expecting, that my family, I have a lot of siblings, was kind of like, I was like, wow, this might actually happen. I might go to my own, country and work there. So I decided to go back to my country. So I wasn't going back to London. That wasn't an option ever for me at that time. I wanted to go to my home country. Yeah. So that's the story.
Very nice. I suppose the fact of having your family on a family on your own also affected that decision, no?
Yes. So my mom, when she heard me speaking to my very small daughter in French, she was like, I don't believe you're speaking to her in French. And I'm like, how can I speak to someone that doesn't speak back in my in Polish that I don't speak with anyone? And she was like, no, I cannot foresee my granddaughter not being able to speak Polish. You have to do something with this. And I was like, yeah, it's a difficult language. That's a fair point. So yeah, that was a big factor as well, that she comes back and lives in Poland and speaks Polish. Yeah, totally.
Nice. So before we wrap up the episode, it's nearly 1 hour already recording. Time flies. Of course, I would like to give you the stage to see where listeners can connect with you, where can people follow you or find your work.
Yeah, so I'm mainly present on LinkedIn. I would say I try to write a lot of articles. There are some articles as well from my experience in West Africa. So I'm, welcome anyone, any questions or anything that your listeners might have through LinkedIn. I'm thinking of writing a book, but more, not really on expat life, more like business book. So I would say it's more like watch this spot. Let's see what will happen. I don't know yet. But it's exciting. I think there are exciting times ahead for us. I feel that.
Nice. So as always, the link to the Wanda's LinkedIn will be in the description of the episode, and eventually, if when this goes live, there is a book there. The link will also be in the description. If not, stay tuned in the LinkedIn, and I assume you will publish something about it there.
Yeah, for sure.
So before we go, I would love if we can finish a little bit with an unexpected expert story or a funny one that you had in your time in Africa, was with this moment that you only think, this can only happen in Africa.
Yeah, so something that you will not expect or I haven't expect. So I was on my first day in Abidjan. I arrived and I was kind of very, kind of nervous, not knowing what to expect. And I'm coming to Ericsson offices, very nice. And I see the cleaning lady that is sitting on a tablet. So she's actually, that was 10 years ago, because I started in Abidjan 10 years ago. So she's basically writing or playing on a tablet. And I was like, and then I realized my own expectation, which was, well, probably there are not tablets available in Africa, or probably there is no access, maybe the Wi-Fi is not great. And I think it made me realize, and actually I've seen it later on, there is a completely different development in digital technology in Africa, in West Africa specifically. And, I would say it's completely different. It's not linear. No one had these small Nokia phones, maybe later, but everyone started to be very digital. And I remember, seeing that and then telling my mom about that this surprised me. And kind of it tells me and us in Europe that, we're expecting everything the same and things are completely different. They kind of compressed and, in many ways, the same week or the same day, maybe I've seen someone paying with their phone, which was completely not possible at that time in Europe. So, that no matter what we think we know, we don't know, I would say.
Nice. It's a nice last sentence to wrap up your experience, I think. Wanda, it has been an amazing experience to talk with you, to have the opportunity to share the story, your business perspective on the topic also, which is a very, very powerful story and an empowerment from a young woman going alone into the West African countries to work. So thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Marc.
It's very nice. For all our listeners, as always, don't forget to subscribe, to follow, share this episode, and leave a comment of what you think about this experience. Until then, keep exploring, stay curious, and see you in the next episode of Expat Experts.